Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Welcome back. It is exactly 8:37 a.m. We're now going to be talking with Hassen Seria, press TV correspondent in South Africa, and this is a devastating story regarding press people that belong to the press fraternity is concerned. Once again, we understand that Al Jazeera staff have been killed in what appears to be a targeted Israeli attack on a tent housing journalists outside of al-Shifa hospital. One of those being, I think it is Anas al-Sharif, being amongst the four press journalists that were killed. And I did say that this is absolutely devastating. It doesn't necessarily mean that when people of the press fraternity are killed, that it is more devastating than anyone else that is killed in Palestine, as far as this horrible, devastating genocide is concerned. And every day without fail, hundreds of people are being targeted and killed brutally in Palestine. Hassen Seria, assalamu alaikum. Welcome to the program.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
Absolutely devastating. I'm wondering if you actually knew the four journalists that were killed outside the al-Shifa hospital, and as the statement indicates, it was a targeted killing. How do you feel about it?
Well, I think there's a great number of concern about this, because this was certainly a targeted assassination, which clearly, and this is both from the Israeli statements, not only after his assassination, but even in the weeks leading up to it, where there was a campaign by the Zionist occupation forces, a public campaign actually through social media and so on, targeting Anas al-Sharif in particular. And if we look at, for example, the statement that were made on social media by Avichai Adrei, who is the Arabic spokesperson for the Israeli occupation force, he claimed, or his suggestion was, that Anas al-Sharif is a legitimate target according to the Zionist forces, because, as they claim, he was the leader of a battalion of Hamas. Now, of course, we know that the reality with Israel, as it has proved throughout this period and throughout its history, is that it does not need any reason for its massacres or its killing. The fact that you may be part of a resistance movement, that you may be a journalist, or that you even a premature baby, that is not an excuse or a reason for the Zionists to go after you. Their mission is to massacre and to commit this genocide that we see unfolding. So if we look at this particular attack, it targeted the entire Al Jazeera team in Gaza City. And of course, we're talking there about 5 members of this team, and I think it's important that we give credit to each of them and their names: Muhammad al-Quraiki, Anas al-Sharif, Ibrahim Dahir, Muhammad Naufal, as well as Muhammad al-Halidi and Mu'min Ilaywa. If we look at this team and we look at the reports of the amount of deaths, yesterday there's reports that between 6 and 7 journalists have been killed in the Gaza Strip. So this is a very serious situation, but this also comes at a point at which the Zionist occupation force now is preparing for this massive scale invasion and occupation, an announced occupation of Gaza City, and of course then the expansion of this occupation that both the Americans and the Zionist forces have been talking about. So when we look at Anas al-Sharif and the type of reporting he's been doing, considering that he is a key journalist for Al Jazeera on the ground in Gaza, and this is the Arabic channel, of course, is that this was, if we could say, the last eyes and ears that the world had on the ground in that particular part of the Gaza Strip. And so this campaign, this assassination of him and the entire Al Jazeera team at this particular point in time is essentially to silence this massacre and this unfolding genocide that has been happening and that the media so bravely over this period has been capturing. So definitely a sad day, not just for the media fraternity here, but for the truth. And I think that is what is captured in his last will as well, that he had consistently and constantly brought to the masses the truth without any form of deceit, because they needed to witness exactly what's happening on the ground. And today we are marking the removal, the demise, the absolute blacking out of that message that Anas has carried so bravely, not just during this period, but prior to that as well, Julie. So certainly a very sad day for us.
In his last video, the loud booms of Israeli intensive missile bombings can be heard in the background as the dark sky is lit in a flash of orange light. And the translation goes as follows: by Anas himself, non-stop bombing for the past 2 hours. The Israeli aggression on Gaza City has intensified. And I should imagine just shortly after this last video of his was when him and the rest of the Al Jazeera journalists, whom you've mentioned by name and whom we have to acknowledge as well, were then bombed and killed. And as you also indicate, this was planned long in advance, because according to Israel, as you've also rightly pointed out, that he was supposedly a part of Hamas, and that is why he needed to be taken out. But that was their excuse, of course. The reason they took Anas and the rest of his colleagues out was because they wanted to muffle the voices of journalists inside of Gaza. And up to today, we do know that more than 200 reporters or journalists and media workers have been killed since this bombardment, this genocide, this ethnic cleansing move by apartheid Israel has started. So more than 200 media personnel have been killed.
Indeed, yes, and I think when we look at this timeline, because even I mean many of the Western institutions that have also been playing this number with the game, numbers game rather, with the massacres of the journalists and media and the media workers within the Gaza Strip and even Lebanon and the other regions where they were targeted by Israel during this latest campaign. They've of course been underplaying the amount of journalists that have been killed, but from the Gaza Strip itself, we're getting figures of 260 or even more journalists that have been killed. And when we look at the situation as far as Anas is concerned, even the CPJ, the Committee to Protect Journalists, just 3 weeks ago, issued a call for his protection because of the type of attacks that were being staged through social media by the Israeli forces that indicated that they had him in the crosshairs. And after his death, of course, Israel came out with the confirmation, which again confirms that this was very much a targeted attack against him to silence his voice, as you point out. But I think the important thing here that we must keep in mind regarding this current development and the situation as far as journalists is concerned is the question of why is it continuing and why is it continuing at this scale, considering that journalists should be protected under the Geneva Convention. And I think here's an important statement that I need to make here in terms of that, Julie, is that so far from Al Jazeera, and particularly the Arabic channel, 11 journalists or media workers have already been assassinated. Al Jazeera has been prevented or been banned from reporting from the West Bank itself as well, as we know. We know there are a number of other channels, Al-Mayadeen channel, which was actually the first that was targeted by the Zionist occupation forces. When we look at the reality of Al Jazeera, though, Al Jazeera is a national asset of Qatar. It is an official media channel of the Qatari government. And yet, despite these massacres, a dozen of its journalists thus far during this particular Israeli aggression, the Qatari state has remained silent. We know that Qatar continues to host the talks, the negotiations, and so on. The head of the Israeli Mossad agency, the head of the American intelligence and military chiefs are regularly in Qatar. CENTCOM, the American Central Command, is based in Qatar as well. Yet the Qatari government has not taken any steps to stop this sort of massacre, considering here that Al Jazeera is part of the Qatari state. It is an entity of the Qatari state. So I think this continues to then give the cover for Israel to continue with this type of action. Qatar has not put down any conditions for the stopping of these massacres against journalists, considering the prominence of Al Jazeera, not just in the Arab and Islamic world, but also throughout the international world with the Al Jazeera English channel and, of course, the various other languages as well. And this is the question of when governments need to step in order to uphold the Geneva Convention as they have signed up to it. And I think it's because of this failing. And we saw this actually starting already in the 2006 war against Lebanon, when Israel, first and foremost, when it launched that attack, went after the broadcasting towers and even brought down the entire building of the Al-Manar TV channel at that point in time, in order to silence the media. And we've only seen that campaign intensify. In 2022, we saw the killing of Shireen Abu Akleh, who, if we look at it again from the Al Jazeera side of it, she was the most prominent journalist in Palestine. And yet again, because of the failure of the governments around the world to uphold the Geneva Convention here, to ensure that the lives of journalists are protected, this only emboldened Israel and allowed it to understand that it may act with impunity. And therefore, we've seen during this particular attack, 11 Al Jazeera journalists, that's apart from the 260 others that have been massacred thus far by Israel, that it enjoys that cover, that states, even if it is with their own state broadcasters, official broadcasters, that their journalists are massacred, that those states will not make a comment, they will not issue a statement, they will not take any action. And this is what ensures that Israel continues to carry out these actions. The concerning thing about this is that while this has been the genocide that we have witnessed being filmed and streamed to us in real time, is that with every journalist, and particularly journalists like these, Anas, who even in his last messages said he will continue, he will not leave Gaza. It is either that he will be silenced, either the truth rather, or death. And of course, now death is what he has achieved. However, with that, part of the message is also going. We understand they were the last team that was in the Gaza city as well. And with that impending invasion and occupation, there are concerns that a part of the story here is being blocked out. And that is our loss because of the failure of all of these governments as well, Julie.
Absolutely. It also indicates, as you've suggested, that Qatar is absolutely complicit regarding these murders, these assassinations are concerned. And you've just also mentioned something very, very worrying, and that is that there is going to be a blockout as far as news is concerned, because I'm wondering if there are any journalists left in Gaza to report the atrocities that are being carried out there, or are we going to be now dependent on the street for random people who may have cell phones, etc., to feed us the news coming off the ground? But this is truly, truly a sad day as far as the world of journalists and international press is concerned, because it impacts on all of us globally for something like this to have happened.
Indeed, Julian, I think that the voice of journalism, or even let's look at it beyond journalism, the voice of truth will not be silenced. Israel here has demonstrated and illustrated its true face. And all of those that continue to support it, all of those that continue to remain silent, they are all complicit. And that is actually what's contained in Anas's will as well, where he says that he has chosen this path. This is his commitment. Of course, he leaves behind two young children, his wife as well, his mom. His father has already been martyred by Israel. But this was the path he took, and this was the commitment he made from having been born in the Jabalia refugee camp all the way through to this day. He has fulfilled his service. but the voice of truth, despite whatever attempts there are by the Zionist regime to obliterate it and to remove it, that will not be removed. And we've already seen that with the Nakba that Israel committed, with the backing and the support of the Europeans and the Americans and the Brits and these, that the records are all there. And when we look at the Palestinian people and the Palestinian heritage as a civilization within West Asia, if we look at their commitment, some of the best journalists and narrators of the history are from the Palestinian background. Some of the top journalists, even at Al Jazeera, newsroom directors and so on, and many other media are from Palestine. So when we look at the Palestinians, I think even if Israel imagines that it can remove or it can obliterate or try to black out the voices of every person who holds the credentials of being a media person or personality or press person of the press, that will not achieve the goal. That the message and the truth of what is happening in Palestine, that certainly will come out. That will not be silenced. And I think also that is a commitment to the voice of people like Anas and all of the other journalists as well, and all of those other Palestinians that have been martyred during this period and throughout this process of extermination that started way back in the early 1900s, that will emerge, that truth will carry, and that Palestine will be liberated. And I think that is, testament to the commitment of Anas, even in his last will, right up to the last, that this is his commitment, Julie.
Inshallah, Amin, with a very, very heavy heart. We will leave it there, Hassan. Undoubtedly, we will talk some more in the future. Allah make it easy for one and all, inshallah. But we do know that all of the martyred people in Palestine, including all of the people of the press, Allah grant total Jannah, and they are Shaheed. Thank you for talking with us. You go well, and Salaam Alaikum to you.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Shukran for having me.
And I just want to say to you, Abdul Razak Ismailov, I've seen all of your messages. Thank you indeed. Can't respond now because we've got a very tight schedule today on the show, but keep your messages, keep posting your messages. They are very interesting and very insightful. Mashallah. It is 8:54 News and Views, moving along right here on Salam Media.